Good. Okay, good. So we've just gone live. So hello everyone. We're not quite at 7 o'clock yet, but we always like to open a little bit early just so we can say hello to you. So I'm Prajnamanas in the large shrine room at the London Buddhist Centre, but also so you can say hello to us. So it'd be lovely to hear who's here. You can put your name in the chat box, say where you're from, and I've got Hiro here and Greg as well, and they'll tell me who's here, where you're from, and especially if you're here for the first time to our online classes at London Buddhist Centre, we're always particularly delighted to hear from you. Not that we're not delighted for people coming back as well, that's also very nice. So, anybody saying hello yet, Hiro?
We've got Marcia saying good evening from Suffolk.
Hello Marcia, a real regular Marcia, very nice to see you.
I've got Maitriji from India.
Oh, Maitriji, that's great. That's marvellous to have someone all the way from India. Great. Really warm welcome.
Got Gurdeep from Port Talbot.
Gurdeep from, yeah, you're a regular as well, Gurdeep from Port Talbot. Very nice. It's interesting that even though I haven't met you in person, many of you, I feel like a familiarity just seeing your names pop up at class after class. Very nice to see you all. Anyone else?
We've got Sophia from Hackney.
Hi, Sophia. Anyone here for the first time? Don't be shy if you're here for the first time. Just say hello. No one yet. Maybe somebody will join us for the first time. Good. Good. So I hope you're all well. Hope your Dharma practice is going well, all of you. And yeah, in a moment I'll start. So it's just 7 o'clock now. So I'll officially start now. So I'll say my name again, so Prajnamanas. So I'm a regular at these Dharma night, Monday night classes, and I'm here with Prajnamanas, who's the main leader of the class tonight. He'll be popping on in a minute, and I'm also here with Hiro and Greg and Ariane and Gia, who are all the team for this evening. So really, really warm welcome to you from all of us. So if it's your first time of the class, I'll just go through the structure. Well, even if it's your many times returner to the class, I'll just go through the structure. So in a moment, what we'll do is we'll have a little mini meditation, just 3 minutes, sort of breathing space, a type meditation. And then after that, Prajnamanas will come on and he will introduce the theme for the evening, which is part of a series, a drop-in series on the mandala of the 5 Buddhas, and he'll say a little bit about what that means. And even though it's a series, each evening stands alone as well, so it's fine if you're just here for the first time tonight. You can catch up, of course, on YouTube. And then Prajnamanas will lead us in a meditation following on from his talk, and that'll take us up to about 5 to 8. Then we'll have a little break, and then after the break is a part of the class I enjoy the most, really, when it's a chance for you to ask us questions on the theme of the evening. So we'll both do our best to respond, and then we'll end with a very short verse, ritual and mantra. So we'll end the evening again very meditatively. Good, it's quite hard to say meditatively. But that's how we'll end the evening. So good. So yeah, welcome if you're just joining us. If you're just joining in now. What we're going to do now is start with just literally a little 3-minute meditation, which I'll guide us in. So get yourself sitting comfortably. On a chair or on cushions. It's really worth investing in some meditation cushions if you've been meditating a lot at home. You can get them online, and you can, if you live near the Buddhist Centre, we sell them here at the centre. It really helps in meditation. And before the team all get too comfortable, maybe one of them would just dim the lights. Thank you very much, Greg. So we're going to dim the lights here, and do the same at home by dimming your computer screen or phone or TV. Good, great, and then we can just close our eyes. Good, maybe just take a few deeper breaths. Always very nice to settle after a busy day or any kind of day. And just see if you can get a sense of your weight dropping down into the cushions or chair, into the floor. Your weight's going down, your energy rising up, your spine rising in its own natural curves, your head just poised and balanced. Softening your face. Softening your belly. Noticing that your body is breathing. You don't need to make any effort to breathe. Your body is just breathing all by itself. All you're doing is paying attention. And to get closer and closer to the sensations of the breath. Just broadening your attention out again, the whole of your body and its sensations. Any sounds you can hear. And then when you're ready, opening your eyes and bringing this little meditation to a close. So hopefully that's helped you to feel a bit more arrived for this session. And if you've just arrived, since I said hello, welcome. I'm Subhadramati, and I'm just about to hand over to Prajnamanas, who's going to give us our talk for the evening and lead us in a longer meditation. Then there'll be a little 5-minute break, and then there'll be a chance for questions and our responses to them, and the whole class will finish at 8:30 with a short ritual and mantra. So I'll hand over to Prajnamanas.
Okay, hello everybody from me. Very nice to be with you all, and thanks Prajnamanas for kicking us off so well. Yes, so I'll just launch straight in, I think, continuing this series about the 5 jnanas, or conquerors as they're known, or figures of what's sometimes called the 5 Buddha mandala. So I think so far we've had Akshobhya, the deep blue Buddha, and Ratnasambhava, or the jewel-born one. And I'll say some things, I've got lots of things actually on my piece of paper, about Amitabha, the deep red Buddha of the West. But yeah, perhaps just to say again how much I appreciate these opportunities actually to connect with everybody online and have some sense of Sangha, even if just remotely, and with at least a handful of us here in the room. So very pleased to be able to do that with you. Yeah. Good. So perhaps a little by way of introduction to the mandala. These 5 Buddhas are said to be 5 facets or qualities of the enlightened mind, such that if you shone light into a prism that was the mind of the Buddha, or an enlightened mind, the colours of light refracted out of them. Hang on, if I got this the right way around, it would refract out in various different colours, and these figures represent something like that, particular aspects of the makeup of an enlightened mind, which partly is so, in a way, unknowable, that we need roots in particular ways to relate, perhaps particular images, because the Buddha's enlightenment is so all-encompassing in terms of the positive qualities we're trying to cultivate as Buddhists, that we also use these figures for to give some particularity to our devotion and find ways to connect with something which otherwise might remain at least lofty, if not slightly abstract. So these 5 Buddhas of the mandala all have this sort of wonderful set of associations, actually. I mean, not only do they all have a colour, they all have a time of day, they all have an animal, an emblem, a type of throne, a consort, a family of gods and goddesses, something they protect, a poison they transform, and so on and so on. So this figure, Amitabha, his name means infinite light, and he's a deep red figure. Perhaps just to start with the name, actually, Amita means can't be measured, and Bha means light. So it means something like measureless or boundless light, which I like already. But then also his red colour means he has an association with evening and the setting sun. So it's a very sort of deep, rich sort of figure, also associated with meditation, and people drawn to Amitabha will usually have a bit of a fascination for meditative states, or the way that you can connect with love in the mind with others. Okay, so there's a little introduction. I'm going to pick up on 3 particular associations of Amitabha, because there are so many, like I say, but I'll just elaborate on 3 particular ones, and hopefully that will give you a picture of these individual ways we can connect with the enlightened mind. And I think that can inspire us in our meditation, give us reasons to look up to the enlightened mind, rather than it just sounding like a good thing to do, or even a religious thing to do, if you see what I mean. And hope that gives you something of a taste for this very rich figure. So I'll talk a bit about red, or redness, a bit about meditative absorption, or dhyana, as the tradition calls it, and say something about lotuses. So, well, actually, perhaps just to say that this Buddha figure behind me is a figure of Amitabha. People usually refer to this as the Buddha or the Buddha figure in the main shrine room, but I think it's often forgotten. Actually, it's an image of Amitabha, which you can tell because his hands are in the meditation mudra. Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha, would be holding a begging bowl instead. Ah yes, and it's also sometimes missed because this figure is golden, which Amitabha can be, but usually he's depicted as sort of deep, rich red, rather like Subhadramati's dress. Actually, I realised I'm wearing the wrong colour tonight. She's in red, the colour of fascination, and I'm in black, which does have a place in Buddhism, but it's associated with the rite of destruction, so that would have been the jumper for a different evening. Too late now. And actually the t-shirt underneath is black as well, so that's no good. So, Amitabha, yes, is red, associated with the West and sunset. And I think that's already a very good image, because I think that sunset and the evening have not just beauty but a bit of magic to them. So I think that sort of sets the atmosphere for Amitabha. But of course it also suggests warmth. I know you can have a beautiful sunset in a cold climate, but the glow of the sun itself, even then, seems to communicate a sort of warmth. Hence Amitabha's connection with love and metta. Metta, we'll do a metta bhavana later, but of course that's a sort of radiating happiness that makes that has no barriers and makes no distinctions, rather like the light of the sun shining on everything indiscriminately. So it has that association. But to sort of zoom back into human beings particularly, it's the colour, of course, of blushing, and Amitabha's seed syllable, so that's a sort of Sanskrit character you sometimes see at the heart of a Buddha figure, is Hri, which means something like shame or remorse. Shame only in the sense of remorse, as in regret at the recognition that we've done something we wish we hadn't, rather than guilt, which is quite another matter. But I think that's already giving us a sort of hint of the ways in which Amitabha might be associated not just with an ethereal type of beauty, but with growth that human beings might engage in now. Because in Buddhist practice, of course, we cultivate the recognition of the effects on us and others of whether our actions are skillful or unskillful. And that blushing or remorseful response, I think, is particularly associated with that type of growth that could be stimulated by recognising that, well, we've done something we wish we hadn't. Of course, you can also just blush because you're embarrassed, or if you're in love. And Amitabha is also associated with love. But yeah, Hri and blushing, also particular association with that redness of Amitabha. But probably by now you're also getting a picture of Amitabha being associated with the whole emotional aspect of the path. So the whole affective side of what we do in Buddhism. So I think that's very important, partly because spiritual life may feel like well, sort of drudgery a lot of the time. I don't know if you know what I mean by that. There's a lot of day-to-day steps you've got to keep taking, a lot of ordinary positivity we've got to develop, a lot of just turning up to our meditation practice or helping out with classes or retreats or whatever it is we've committed to doing. But of course, if this doesn't start to have an attraction or fascination for us, eventually it will dry out. So partly I think Amitabha is standing for the emotional engagement that we really need if we're to not just stay in the game of spiritual life, but actually allow that to deepen. and turn into, I think, a sort of love. I think eventually, as a practicing Buddhist, I think you've got to start to love the Dharma, and maybe even practice it just for its own sake, or just out of love, rather than because it has positive effects. So Amitabha, I think, can stimulate our heart to get involved. Our founder, Sangharakshita, has said that much of the work of Buddhist practice is finding emotional equivalents for our intellectual understanding. And Amitabha would be a classic sort of symbol for that, I think. So something, if you like, to use the phrase loosely, that we could really fall in love with, not just tread along. Yeah. So one more association of red before I move on is that, of course, it's also the colour of blood. Blood in our traditional movement, I know, is also associated with the Sangha, so the community of people following the path. And I like that image partly because the whole system needs blood in order to function. But also to be nourished. So blood is a sort of, well, I don't know, it's an extremely sort of vital thing, isn't it? But also it kind of nourishes the body, and it's associated with passion. So that sort of flowing of the red blood of the community and what it sparks off amongst us is very important too. I had an occasion recently, don't know whether this is a bit sort of funny thing to share, I had a dream in which blood was flowing out from my heart after an occasion, I think, of feeling particularly emotionally open, that blood was flowing out from me, and I felt very, very glad. So it's a strange dream because, of course, if that happened in real life, that would be a medical emergency, but in the realm of the dream, I knew that this was a sort of wonderfully good and nourishing thing, that the blood was also passing out of me into the world, and I felt deeply happy. So I think that's what I wanted to say about blood, actually, particularly. So, there are the things I picked up on about this red colour. But perhaps to sort of deepen this a bit and go to what might be internal. I've talked about attraction and fascination and the Sangha and so on. But also what this figure is very emblematic of is meditation. So, what the tradition calls dhyana are particularly absorbed meditative states. And I think that those are sort of inherently attractive. So I think of itself, absorption and depth is something that we want. But again, it will particularly nourish our spiritual life if we can enjoy meditation, actually practice altogether for its own sake. So I think that sort of signifies the inner resources of a deepening mind. It's healing and nourishing to the mind, inherently attractive, but also helps us to look more closely at reality. Or perhaps just one other thing about inner resources too. Much of the sort of problem with our own ordinary way of being in the world is that we look outside ourselves for sources of satisfaction. So, I mean, I notice this going about my day. I'm always looking forward to the next thing. If that's a meeting with somebody or a meal or even eventually going to sleep, I'm always in one position looking forward to being in the next position, often in a mild state of craving, actually, which is taking me out of what's happening now. But I think over the longer span of our lives also, we are very often trusting in things from outside to give us our satisfaction. So to sort of scale it up slightly, that would be, I don't know, a next job or a holiday or a warmer season coming, or even, I don't know, the pandemic being a thing of the past, and so on, up to the whole scale of our lives. But absorption in meditation will really increase in us the sort of trust or confidence that actually we're carrying resources in ourselves all the time. So if I can close my eyes, follow my breath, bring a friend to mind, and then feel, even if it's just that sort of lovely sort of first layer that comes over me of feeling that the body settles and is finally all one thing, rather than a sort of bony bag of lots of bits of sensation and, I don't know, bits that are pleasurable and lots of bits that are uncomfortable. It all feels like one thing, and as though my mind is also one thing with it, so I feel more like a sort of indefinable living organism, rather than a brain on two sticks with a clicking finger attached, trying to sort of bash through tasks and look forward to when I can be released from the tensions of the day. It was funny, even I slept badly last night because I couldn't, for some reason, quite relax. So even getting into bed didn't work, you know, even that sort of comfort didn't give me what I was after, and I started looking forward to the next day because that was at least going to be more pleasant than lying in bed. So meditative states, I think they're not actually an escape from that. It's more like it turns the model on its head and says, I actually already have what I need, only sometimes in observing the mind. Perhaps also particularly in cultivating my imaginative connection with the other people in my life. So, yes, I think the jnanas or meditative states are inherently attractive, but as I was just going on to say, help us to look more at the way things are. So you'll have heard a million times, if you've been doing our morning Zooms for meditation or been to many of these classes, that the sort of twin purposes of Buddhist meditation are to make the mind tranquil and absorbed and flexible and warm, and then to contemplate reality. And there's a particular way in which Amitabha contemplates reality. So he has a wisdom associated with him. This is sometimes called the discriminating wisdom, or the wisdom of particularity. And what that would recognize, once this mind has been nourished with these deeper, more absorbed states, perhaps with this particular lens, this particular sort of red refraction of love and appreciation and warmth, it will see in everything, in all beings and everything, their complete uniqueness. So whereas Ratnasambhava recognises in another way the sameness in everything, as you would have heard about last week, which really means that all things are subject to a sort of flow of conditions, Amitabha would see, and even I think just love all beings for their exact and unique nature. So, yeah, that also reminds me that the poison Amitabha is said to transform is greed. And of course, greed wants everything all at once. It's not satisfied with any amount of a thing, whether it's I don't know, screen time or food or money. Whereas the appreciative mode hardly needs anything in order to appreciate, and will, in that positive sense, discriminate between all things and all beings it sees, knowing their real particularity, which for growth on the Buddhist path is so important. I think there's no end to the sort of kind of depth and range of people that come across the Dharma, for example, and everybody needs recognising for exactly who they are, partly because growth will look so different for different people. One of my preceptors, so someone involved in ordaining people, said that you can never measure two people for their readiness for joining our order in the same way, because no two people will express their readiness for ordination in the same way. And what that really means is that everybody grows differently. So this wisdom of particularity recognises that and picks it up and values it without elevating or demoting in importance any of those beings on that account. So it's this wisdom of particularity. So perhaps one more thing about growth then, or the third association, having done red and the jnanas, is the lotus. So Amitabha is particularly associated with lotuses. In some depictions he's cradling a lotus in his hand, and he's always seated on a red lotus. And the lotus is a symbol for growth. Partly that's because of the slow unfolding of its petals represent our opening up to spiritual life, so our increased receptivity and gradual the sort of fanning out of all of our different qualities in the sort of nourishment of the water and light of spiritual life that we need. But it's also a symbol for a particular model of the path. So you can see a growth in Buddhism either in terms of a path that you tread along with regular steps, proceeding as you know you need to in a sort of logical, sense-making, well-measured way. But there's also another model, sometimes known as the immanence model, which basically says that every being simply unfolds their nature more and more deeply until discovering their deepest nature, which is to be, at least in potential, a Buddha. So there's a bit of a danger there in seeing yourself as a Buddha already, but without time to sort of go more into that, it's saying that, in effect, all you need to do is open up your own potential more and more, like the petals of a flower opening. And actually you will reach this goal of enlightenment. So the lotus and its openness are sort of particularly important, openness and receptivity being closely linked. And perhaps just one sort of image to end on is that for this openness or receptivity, that the animal associated with Amitabha, and he's sometimes seated on two of them, is the peacock. Particularly sort of fascinating animal, I think, for the Buddha associated with fascination. But the myth of the peacock, apparently, is that it swallows the poisonous snake whole and comes to no harm, and that the poisonous snake comes to be expressed in the colours of the peacock's tail feathers. And I like that for two reasons. One is that it suggests that this model of openness or receptivity or love is open even to poison. So it would not turn, it's a sort of wisdom that would not turn away even from the worst things that we might encounter. So particularly, a sort of courageous degree of openness, but also that it's a symbol for integration. So that that poisonous or damaging aspect represented by the snake is absorbed fully into this being that then becomes all the more beautiful, as in the tail feathers, for it, so that in our nature, I think that's saying, the bird and the snake are not separate but integrated and sort of nourished together and give birth to something greater. Yeah. So this wisdom of particularity would start to transform the fact that we always interpret what's happening around us and perhaps reject some things in our nature as unfavourable. Takes the fact that we're always interpreting and turns it into a recognition of uniqueness. So yeah, I find that particularly inspiring, and perhaps just well, it's probably too graphic an image for a meditation, but you could think of that integrating aspect of the snake actually being taken into a bird, and see if that resonates for you. Yeah, but the most important thing about this figure is probably his ability to see what's completely unique in every being around him, and to love on that basis. Good. So there's lots of things for you to digest about Amitabha. We'll do some meditation now. Yeah, and I think we'll do the Metabhavana. We'll do 3 stages of the Metabhavana, just to give ourselves a bit of time to dwell on this this appreciative warmth of the sunset, that even though it sees what's particular in all beings, as we would in the stages of the metta, is open to all of them, whatever our thoughts are about them, whatever our relationship to them. So if you want to set yourselves up for a meditation, we'll sit for 15, perhaps 20 minutes, and I'll just give us a reminder of those 3 stages. If you know the practice, we'll do the 1st, 2nd and 5th stages. So that's appreciation or well-wishing for ourselves, a good friend, and then eventually all beings. So you just set up your meditation posture, or get comfortable if you haven't meditated before. And you might want to turn the lights down or light a candle. And be letting your spine assume its natural, gentle S-curve. And relaxing your weight into the cushion or chair. Again, perhaps taking a few deeper breaths to help the body relax. And softening the shoulders and the hands and the face. And and moving into the first stage of this short Metta-bhavana session. So cultivating well-wishing for ourselves. And perhaps just recalling a few of those qualities of the Buddha Amitabha. Of the warm red glow of a sunset. Or even, if you like, seeing a deep red, beautiful Buddha figure in your mind. So just conjuring a bit of appreciation, perhaps, for your own efforts to grow. And to gradually unfold towards this sunshine and warmth. So now welcoming a good friend into that atmosphere. In all their particularity. Extending that warmth and appreciation to them. So you could imagine this friend becoming more and more radiantly happy. And growing in their own very particular way. So with ourself and our friend together, first of all. Then starting to welcome more beings into this sphere of metta. And this well-wishing that if it had a colour would be a deep red. So opening that loving awareness out to more and more beings as your imagination allows. And letting go of that effort or of that image now. Just relaxing in the body and the breath. And letting that meditation be absorbed. Okay, well done. Sorry about the sneeze. I think we have a few minutes of leg stretch now while we rejig the room a bit so that Prajnamati and I can answer your questions. So do whatever you need to do for a couple of minutes. We'll stay online. Okay.
Okay, good. So welcome back from wherever you've been. And yeah, thanks very much, Prajnamanas. I really enjoyed hearing about Amitabha and connecting that with the meditation. So we've got about 20 minutes now where you can ask questions, we'll try and respond, and then we'll end, as I was saying, with a mantra, and before that we'll have the transference of meditators. So, who's this coming in the door? Oh, that's all right. An extra team member. Good. So, if you've got any questions, just type them in, and then Hyril will feed them to us. Okay. No questions yet? That's all right. Sometimes it takes a time to formulate a question. So, yeah, especially if there's any questions about this figure of Amitabha, about archetypal figures in general, about this wisdom of particularity, about this model of the lotus as opposed to the path model. Hiro's still shaking his head. Anything you'd like to know a bit more about? Just feel free. Nothing's taboo to ask us. Give it a few more minutes, then we'll have to invent questions. We'll have to make up the questions we think that you might ask. And we'll have to ask Ariane to ask us a question. Why don't we ask some of our crew if they've got any questions? Ariane's got a question.
Yeah, I was wondering about what is Amitabha's animal, and you said something about facing the West or representing the West.
Yeah, so maybe we'll just say the question again, yeah.
So Ariane was asking what is Amitabha's animal, and you also mentioned the West, just meaning you'd like to know more about the West as the association.
Yeah, the association, exactly.
Okay. Are you happy to take that one?
Okay, so should we start with the West? Well, so the West, kind of means the West as in the compass point of the West, but what it's maybe it gives us a chance to say a bit more about this mandala of the 5 Buddhas and what a mandala is. So a mandala is a harmonious pattern, like a sort of circular pattern. Actually, it is a stylized lotus, which is interesting because you've been talking about the lotus. So in this mandala of the 5 Buddhas, you've got one figure in the middle, who we'll be hearing about on week 5. His name's Vairocana. And then we've got at each of the cardinal points, you have a different figure. So we began in the east with Akshobhya, and of course the east associated with dawn. Akshobhya is associated with the very, very moment the Buddha gained enlightenment, which is at dawn. And then you've got Ratnasambhara in the south, and Ratnasambhara is associated with his colours yellow, so he's associated with abundance, the full summer sun, the noonday sun. And then you move around and you've got Amitabha in the west, which is, well, as Prajnamanas was saying, this magical time of day, and magical sort of with just that setting sun. One quality of the setting sun is you can gaze into it without harm. Like in the noonday sun is too bright to gaze at, but the sun as it's setting, you can actually fully look at it, which seems just quite evocative in its own right, that these different, each of these Buddha figures is a different kind of mood. It's a facet of enlightenment, as Prajnamanas said, but you could say it's a sort of mood of enlightenment. And again, it shows that enlightenment's got a whole spectrum of qualities. So that's a bit about the West. Want to add anything about the West?
No, I think you've said it. Yeah.
And then, the animal, the peacock. Well, you said quite a lot about the peacock eating these poisonous snakes, transforming jealousy and envy, which of course they're the sort of enemies of love, often sort of arise simultaneously with love, especially romantic love. So, it's this sort of, and I love this image of that poison is swallowed and transmuted into these peacock feathers. because again in Buddhism we talk about transforming all the poisons. We've all got these things like jealousy, envy, ill will and hatred and craving. But I remember when I first started learning about Buddhism, the thing that really excited me is it's not like we're trying to chop off these aspects of ourselves and sort of somehow get rid of them. We're actually like taking the energy of them and allowing that to be transformed. I mean, that's not the work of a day, and in a way it's quite mysterious work, but it's just, I think that image of the peacock is about that. It's about we transform the poisons. We don't sort of hack them off ourselves, as it were. You're laughing at my metaphors. It's funny, actually, this isn't answering a question, but I was very, I kept smiling when Prajnamanas was talking about the Amitabha's wisdom of discrimination and particularity. Just because Prajnamanas and I work very closely together, you probably could hardly get more different people. Actually, I think it's true to say we've learned to love the differences of each other and be very amused by them. And I think there is a wisdom in that each is like, I'm not trying to become like Prajnamanas, and he's probably certainly not trying to become like me, in a certain sense, in terms of our characters. But here we are, both living the Dharma life, both fully committed, both deepening that. So actually, there's something very similar about us as well, and our commitment is, we're moving in the same direction, trying to help each other in our friendship to deepen our commitment, but in amusingly different ways. Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Ariane, for kicking us off in questions. Is there any questions from the...
Yeah, so on that topic of difference, Josephine asks, Marcia asks, how do we appreciate uniqueness without losing sight of interconnectedness? Go on, Prajnamanas. So the question is, how do we appreciate uniqueness without losing sight of interconnectedness?
Yes, good. That's a good one. Some big terms in there. Yeah, thanks, Marcia. So I think you might be saying, if you appreciate, imagine we're thinking about people mostly. I mean, I keep saying beings, but imagine really we're thinking about people like in Prajnamanas' example, the people being me in Prajnamanas. How do you appreciate their uniqueness? Well, actually, I was just thinking, Ratnasambhava, so the previous Buddha in the cycle, the bright yellow Buddha associated with midday and abundance and so on. It is his wisdom that's wisdom of sameness, isn't it? So I think the key might be in there. It sounds almost opposite. There's a wisdom of sameness and then a wisdom of difference. It's sometimes also called a wisdom of particularity. But I think the wisdom of particularity works in the context of the wisdom of sameness, because there are fundamental ways in which we are all the same. So I think you can look through that lens as well. It's interesting that they're both wisdoms, because wisdom itself probably doesn't need some extra sort of epithet afterwards, if you see what I mean. Wisdom itself, I don't think there would even be a word for. It would just be a sort of boundlessly deep seeing. I was going to say seeing of things or of reality, but even that sounds too sort of particular. It would just be a complete vision of reality absorbed into one's awareness. But the wisdom of sameness is a particular lens through which that wisdom is being, well, refracted, to use that image again, and seeing in that particular instance the fundamental sameness shared by all people. So you could say that that's what we sort of visit every time we do the Metabhavana, in recognising that everybody, I mean, the thing I tend to focus on, particularly myself in the Metabhavana, is that everybody wants to grow. we say, may you make progress, but another way of talking about that is just growth. And I really, really believe that that's true. And some people at classes and so on will say, well, some people don't want to grow, or some people don't make any efforts to, and what do we do about, tensions with them and so on. But I actually think that somewhere in the being of every being is a wish to develop away from suffering and out of the limitations of a present situation towards one that's unlimited. So I think that a will towards growth, which for a Buddhist ultimately means a will towards enlightenment, is sort of incipient in any being. And the wisdom of sameness is seeing that. By the time you come round to the West and sunset and the wisdom of particularity, I think that is the wisdom through another lens, saying that within that context, everybody grows and develops in a different way. So it's particularly that I'm thinking of. I mean, to bring it really down to earth, the example I had in mind when I mentioned my preceptor during the talk, saying that you can't measure two people's approach to the sort of lifetime commitment of ordination in the same way, was he said, if vegetarianism is a natural expression of the first precept that we practice, so not harming living beings, hence not eating meat, might be very easy for one person to practice, and another person might be very, very difficult. So if the first person could be doing a lot better and has said they want to move towards that commitment of ordination but is still eating meat because they like it, there's lots of room for improvement, and that they, as it were, could well be covering that ground. But if somebody else, say, has had a completely different sort of conditioning, when I've got a friend whose father ran an abattoir and who worked there in all of his summer holidays, so his contact with Buddhism and the idea of vegetarianism is already very, very different. Actually cuts quite deep to something about his family, his upbringing, the values that were instilled in him, and so on. That's an instance of particularity, if you see what I mean, and you couldn't say that both people should just be at the same point at the same time. They're approaching it all from... It's like saying there are as many approaches to the Dharma as there are people practicing the Dharma. So while the Dharma is universal, people are particular. Maybe that's another way of seeing it. We're particular, very, very particular beings, a bit like Prajnamanas was saying about our friendship, very particular beings working towards a universal ideal. And I think both of those things can be sort of true and coexist. I don't know if I quite answered the question about interconnectedness, but I think that's my piece on the wisdoms.
Good.
You've got anything to add about that?
Let's see if there's that's great.
Okay.
Let's see if there's another question. That's really fulsome answer. Yeah.
So a question from Josephine. Can you tell us a little bit more about the relationship between Amitabha and Hri?
Okay, so that's a bit more about the relationship between Amitabha and Hri. Should I say something about this? So as Prajnamanas said, so Hri is the seed syllable of Amitabha, as Prajnamanas said. The seed syllable of a Buddha is like their very, very essence. Actually, to end the evening, we're going to be chanting that seed syllable together. And Hri actually means this quality of remorse. And maybe what I'll do is, hopefully this will respond to Josephine's question, talk about just a little bit, Prajnamanas already alluded to it, that there is a complete difference between remorse and guilt in Buddhism. One's completely positive and one is completely unhelpful. So one's completely helpful, one's completely unhelpful. One's completely skillful, one's completely unskillful. So remorse is what we feel. Well, maybe I'll take a step back. For remorse to arise, there has to be shraddha, there has to be faith, there has to be an idea of value. There has to be something we've placed our heart upon. And remorse, which is a positive, painful feeling, which is quite interesting, isn't it? Usually we use, we think painful, we think painful means negative and pleasure means positive. But here you've got a positive, ethically positive yet painful feeling of remorse. It's when, it's like the spark when the thing you've done that you regret meets your value. Yeah? So you've got this value, I want to be generous, then I do something really mean. And if I'm sensitive enough, I feel the painful spark of remorse. I didn't live up to the values that I'd set myself. And it's very, very positive, because you can only experience it if you have values in the first place, if you have Shraddha, if you've already placed your heart upon something. And that's like the blush of Amitabha. It's a sign of our practice going in the right direction if actually we, in a sense, blush more with free. We feel that more deeply. We just, maybe even a simpler way of putting it is we just don't want to hurt people, and when we hurt people we just feel, oh no, it's painful, but it's positive. Guilt is something different. Guilt's when we just go round and round blaming ourselves and feeling terrible, and we're sort of paralysed. We can't move forward. We're sort of punishing ourselves. That's not helpful, because there's sort of no movement in it. I'm trying to remember what Oscar Wilde said about guilt. It's very funny and very telling. He says something like, Oscar Wilde says something like, there's luxury in guilt. While we're reproaching ourselves, we feel that nobody else can reproach us. So when we're in guilt, we're not really taking responsibility. We feel terrible, but it's not growthful, whereas remorse is positive because it's growthful. We know the next step to take. We know we've got to make amends. We know we've got to re-inspire ourselves. So that's all encapsulated in this Buddhist word Hri. Quite good to sort of learn these Buddhist words, actually, because there's no direct translation. We might say remorse, but that's not really strong enough. We might say shame, but that's got all sorts of funny connotations in the English language. So Hri is just this very very interesting and crucial part of growth, actually, that we become sensitized to Hri. Anyway, it's one of my favourite topics, so I'm saying quite a lot about it. Yeah, I hope that's a helpful response. And why is Amitabha particularly connected with Hri? You said something about that, didn't you?
Did I?
I think when you were talking about craving, I can't remember. I've never quite known why, apart from the red colour, that Amitabha is particularly connected with Hri.
I mentioned red and blushing and Hri.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to research that more.
I don't know the why. No.
Yeah. Good. Okay, probably time for maybe one or two more. One anyway.
So, a question from Jill. Are there still differences at the point of enlightenment?
I want to say something. You say something first.
Okay. I believe so, yes. Haven't been there. But that's what the tradition says. I think that's partly why you have this mandala of 5 Buddhas, actually, is to say that there are particular qualities and capacities and wisdoms and particular kinds of depth. So I think that enlightenment is the sort of intersecting of a particular human with a universal truth or sort of breakthrough or ability, like I was saying, to just see reality as it really is. But it's interesting that seeing has to be done by something with the capacity to see, i.e. a being. They've got to work in combination. Sangharakshita, our founder, you'll have to correct me if I get this wrong, has said something like, there is no enlightenment, only enlightened beings. Is that right?
Probably.
Anyway, we think it's close enough. As if to say, you've got to have a vessel in which to carry something universal. Otherwise, how would you access it, or see it, or know it? There's something universal, it doesn't have any particular qualities, so how do you perceive or sense it? But if it meets or intersects with the particularity of a human being, suddenly it finds expression. And then one last thought. I know that the Buddha rejoiced in his enlightened disciples for their particular qualities. There's a lovely sutta in which he says, I can't remember their names, but you are foremost in meditation, you are foremost in giving, you are foremost in teaching the Dharma. But these arahants, as the tradition calls them, so people who'd also followed the Buddha into his complete breakthrough, but he still found that they had a particular shape, if you like, and perhaps a particular sort of speciality within enlightenment. And the 5 Buddha mandala is that same truth on the archetypal level. So these are beings made of light, but of a particular colour, with a mythic association with an animal and a time of day, and so on.
Yeah, that's very good. I think that's right. I think I would agree. That's how I imagine enlightenment. That there's still is discrimination even in enlightened, but not in any sort of negative way. So, but an enlightened being might even still make a choice. Again, Bhante Sangharaj, our teacher, said, just in a much more simple example, that, you know, if an enlightened being was offered like 2 choices for breakfast, like say they were offered like, I don't know, like porridge or strawberries or something, they could still choose, but the difference in an enlightened being they wouldn't make a fuss if there was only porridge or only strawberries, you know. But I think that is, it's not that everything becomes a sort of blandness somehow. There is still that ability to choose, but it wouldn't be a preference based in craving. It'd be completely, an enlightened being would be completely equanimous in whatever situation. And I think that becomes more important. I mean, I might just be saying the same thing as Prajnamanas has already said, but the quality of enlightenment is essentially responsive. So, you know, if an enlightened person was in this room with Prajnamanas and me and Arihan and Greg and Hyril, and that enlightened being would see the potential for enlightenment in all of us, but at the same time would teach us all in a different way, would see that, you know, Arihan needed one kind of response and I needed another, you know, even maybe depending on what mood we were in. So the quality of enlightenment would be very, very sensitive and very, very responsive. You wouldn't get stock answers from an enlightened being. You'd always get something fresh or new, and that would be drawn out by the encounter. So like communication, even for an enlightened being, is a 2-way thing. So if somebody was really receptive to the Buddha, the teaching they would receive would be different from somebody who was unreceptive, because they would be affecting it. So I think there's quite a lot in that question. It's quite important to ponder upon. So thank you. So we'd love to say more, but we've probably got to start winding up. So thanks. That was really good questions. So yeah, in a minute we're going to do a transference of merit verse and the mantra. Just before that, just as ever, just say a little bit about our culture here and invite you to join in with us. So the culture is a culture of generosity. That's how that's behind what we do at the centre here. Prajnamanas and I are here giving the class, and the crew are here, including Guillaume, who was here early, just because we want to, well, it's an expression of our Dharma practice to be here. It's sort of what gives life to it. I was thinking, Prajnamanas and I, in our sort of admin work at the centre, were already texting each other before breakfast this morning, trying to sort things out with it. So we've been all day doing our emails, doing our everything we do, having our meetings. But then we come here in the evening, and this is, in a sense, this is what it's all for. This is what we want to share. And the team have all been working all day on their different jobs, and they've come here, or doing things all day. They've come here because they want to share. And that's the spirit that we're trying to cultivate. So one of sharing, one of generosity. And if you would like to join in with that, the best way to do that now is by giving us a financial donation. Usually we'd say come and join our team and so on, but at the moment we can't, because we're only allowed 4 or 5 people in here at once. But so the best way is to make a financial contribution if you can. So the suggested amount is £10, and I think Hyril will put the link in the box. You can give that on our Just Giving site. And that especially helps us just now that we've had to close our physical doors. It just helps us to be able to bring the Dharma to more and more people. And we keep looking at ways to expand our offering, and anything that you give just helps us to be able to do that. So thank you very much, and thank you to those of you who I know are already been giving a lot very generously. Good, so what we'll do now is we'll have the transference of merit and self-surrender verse. And I really encourage you to participate in this. It's in call and response. So you can just sit in your meditation posture. I'll say a line, and then you just repeat the line back. And the team will be doing that here. And then at the end, Prajnamanas will lead us in the Amitabha mantra. And again, I really encourage you to join in with that mantra. And then you're really participating in the ritual, and we'll all make an offering to the shrine. If you have a shrine at home, you may want to offer some incense or a candle, and then we'll blow the candles out, and that'll be the end of the evening. Good, so let's settle ourselves for transference of merit. Good. Transference of merit and self-surrender. May the merit gained.
May the merit gained.
In my acting thus.
In my acting thus.
Go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
Go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
My personality throughout my existences.
My personality throughout my existences.
My possessions.
My possessions.
And my merit in all 3 ways.
And my merit in all 3 ways.
I give up without regard to myself.
I give up without regard to myself.
For the benefit of all beings.
For the benefit of all beings.
Just as the earth and other elements.
Just as the earth and other elements.
Are serviceable in many ways.
Are serviceable in many ways.
To the infinite number of beings.
To the infinite number of beings.
Inhabiting limitless space.
Inhabiting limitless space.
So may I become.
So may I become.
That which maintains all beings.
That which maintains all beings.
Situated throughout space.
Situated throughout space.
So long as all have not attained.
So long as all have not attained.
To peace.
To peace. Om Amideva Hari. 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 Om Amideva